joining the 5th session in the luxury series. This one is the language of luxury. We're going to go over contracts, including the Florida residential contract for sale and purchase, as well as the listing agreement. Not going over it in its entirety. We're just giving you some key pointers that should be on there for luxury, but things to think about in your general everyday real estate world. Negotiations, things that might be specific to luxury. Expectations of luxury clients, and a fun little dictionary exercise that I gave you the link at the end so you guys can pull it up yourself and we don't feel trees by continue for you. So, this is Linda Caruso here. I'm Tony Benton, and we are here in the Clearwater office. If you have questions, reach out, but I will let Linda lead. How's it going?
Good. Well, Tony has really run with this. So Tony created this amazing information and slideshow for us. So I'm probably going to let you run with it since you did this. And I'm going to jump in with information. And as I mentioned last time, we are creating the content here, and it's just coming from us sharing our experiences with you. And we encourage all of you to ask the questions, bring the comments. You all bring a lot to our table as well, as we hope we're doing for you. So to start out, go ahead, Tone.
So I'm sorry about the formatting. It doesn't look like that when I send it, I promise. But I think somewhere in translation, it gets kind of reformatted like right here. So Kevin will fix it as we go because that's what he does for us. He's amazing. So the listing agreement. So we would love to talk about what conveys with the sale and what does not convey. Obviously, these are things that we need to go over in any contract or listing agreement, right? But there are special things in a luxury property. And Linda and I had a pretty lengthy conversation about this yesterday. What about home theater furniture? It's not attached, right? So does it stay? Does it go? Are they moving to another property that has another home theater? These are things to think about. Hold on.
Also the equipment.
Equipment
I've had that happen
for it.
many times.
Yeah, equipment for the home theater, security devices. What about if you live in a golf cart community or a golf community? And there's a golf cart in the garage. Is that going to stay? Is it something that's extra? If they're paying cash, we can put it on the contract. If not, it might want to go on a separate addendum or amendment to the contract later.
And one thing I'm going to jump in and say,
Yes.
Tony and I, when we did talk, most of what we're going to say today applies to luxury and non-luxury. So there's not a big difference when we're talking contracts. However, there's a lot more out there that has to be taken into consideration, as she said. And I know we both agree that when you're walking in a home, pay attention to what they have, because they live in the home as luxury and non-luxury. They don't realize what should say and what shouldn't say. But if you don't ask the question, you may find yourself in a situation at the closing. And how many of us have paid for washers and dryers or something that should not have stayed, should have been conveyed, non-conveyed? So
yeah, like the lovely 1990s curtains that match the bedspread, right? Those are supposed to stay, but if they're so in love with that bedspread and those curtains and they take them, it now becomes an issue, right?
why is that? Because they don't read the contract.
Yeah, so you have to let them know what's supposed to stay and what's not. Anytime, any contract, but it's a little different in luxury because there's more items to discover, right?
I just talked to someone, I'm going on a luxury listing appointment after this, and we were talking about all the audio devices. Does that stay? Doesn't have to. Most of these luxury homes, they have their own room with rack systems. I've had clients who said, I'm taking it all with me.
Yeah.
I had some that said, I am going to leave it. The best thing that you can do is at that point say, can you create a list for me of what you're taking and a list of what conveys, and put a dollar value to those items that convey. Because I don't know that Best Buy came in and there's 4 different racks of audio, video, and what's the value of that? Because I want to promote that on the marketing material, and I want to be able to have a conversation with the clients, because of course I'm walking them through this beautiful, luxurious home. And I can say, this is what it does, this is how it doesn't have a warranty, and here's the value. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Do your research based on the number of days similar properties are on the market, right? Because you don't want to set up a listing agreement for 3 months. If the market says that it's taking 6 months for a property like that to sell, right? It's a little different in this market, but you still have to know those numbers. We're talking about in general, right? So just do your research, make sure you know the number of days on the market so that you're not short selling yourself, because it's very expensive to market a luxury property the correct way.
And I think that it should be expected that a year listing is more than fair as a listing agent, because as Tony said, you're spending thousands on this. And if you explain it properly to the client, they're going to understand that this is an investment on me to you. I had a conversation with someone the other day about, it was a beach property and what their expectation of price was and what the real price was. And if you're asking me to get you at this level, you need to give me time, because there's only so many people in this luxury area of $2 to $4 million in Clearwater that will be looking at this property. It could go in a week, it could go in a year. Especially if they're overpricing it. Have the time, you're gonna need it.
Yeah, it's a smaller pool of buyers for sure. All right, next slide. Okay. See, that did not happen on my thing that I sent. Okay, the Florida real estate contract for sale and purchase. I am talking about the FAR bar, not the CRIS contract, but section 1D, personal property. We've already kind of talked about this, but we need to make sure that it is written what stays and what doesn't. And keep in mind, ranges are plural, refrigerators are plural. It's inclusive of wine refrigerators, right? So if that wine refrigerator is not staying, you need to note that. Even if it's a freestanding one, just be very specific, because that's where the gray areas start to cause problems down the road.
You know what I do too? I always ask, when you said refrigerators or any appliance, as silly as it sounds, does it work? Because how many times have we had ice makers or water dispensers, or a situation where they think they're doing the buyer a favor and leaving something, and they forgot to mention the buzzer on the dryer doesn't work. Here comes that inspector who says, gotta fix that buzzer. What does seller say? I was leaving it for them as a courtesy.
Yeah.
So always ask, do they work? Anything not working?
Right. And if you disclose it up front, it's not an issue. If you disclose it later, it's an issue, right? Section 1E on the contract excluded personal property. So what is not conveying with the sale? And I tell this story all the time, but I had a listing and I educated that seller very well as to what should stay with the property. So when they purchased a property and we walked through, they had mentioned that there was a chandelier in the master bedroom closet. And how silly is that? Why would someone put a chandelier in the closet? When we did our final walkthrough, guess what was gone? The chandelier. And now it's a big issue. Had they simply disclosed it in the beginning that it was leaving, then it would have been a non-issue. Held up closing for 3 days, fighting with the seller and the listing agent, because they didn't feel like they did anything wrong because they replaced it with an ugly light. But that wasn't what was there when the contract was written. So just try to prevent these things from occurring by being upfront with it.
You know what I like to do too? I just did this yesterday on a listing agreement. They had a few things that were important to them that they wanted to exclude. I had them put it on the property disclosure form, because the property disclosure form, they read and they sign. So just as an added protection, but put it in the MLS as well. Realtor comments, put it in there just so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah. And there is a little box on the seller disclosure, so that's a great point. If they had a list, there's a box that says there's a separate attachment to this that has additional information. So you can check that box and attach that to the back end of the seller's property disclosure. So I love that.
We do very similar where we make a list of what's coming with it, and yet it's sent over to the buyer to initial at time of contract.
Yeah.
You can never go wrong with disclosure.
Yeah.
I feel so strongly about that. And I will tell you that you will, you'll make friends with that other agent quickly if you have that communication going, and you'll save yourself in the end with a chandelier, because you know what? It's usually not because they want it that badly. It's because they can't have it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's usually what it is.
Section 20, that's a place where you can add some great information. One thing you might want to consider, international buyers, you might want to add a clause for them regarding exchange rates, because those change. That might increase the amount that they have to pay out at the end if the rates are not locked in. The dangerous thing about an international buyer locking in the exchange rate, though, is if they go lower, they've locked in at a higher price, right? So it's a risk either way. So you might want to add a clause about that in special or additional terms.
Very good point.
Yeah,
Very
I mean, it's just all those little things. If there's, I could have gone forever on this list. We could elaborate for days, but you have to listen to what the client is saying. And if I were you, I would start researching international buyer, what to do, or whatever it is in the situation that you're facing. You really need to do your research and be the person of knowledge for them. They're relying on you. So
I have a question.
yes, everyone, this is Kathy Condon. She is
Late
a
to
long
the party.
time realtor, so she knows what she's doing.
Exactly.
ma'am.
I'm late, 10 demerits. Sorry about that, ladies, but you know how that goes.
It's okay.
Question is, okay, so you've got an international buyer who's coming to buy your property, and you're correct. The exchange rates definitely, if they're coming from Brazil, let's say, who knows what the exchange rate is. So is that something that we should be talking, let's say it's my listing, is that something I should be talking to the buyer's agent about and trying to figure it out,
I
or?
think that's more so if we're representing the buyer.
Okay.
If the buyer's agent on the other side doesn't put that in for their client, I'm not opening that can of worms or educating them on
And
it.
that's because we're a single agent as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, true.
They
But
should be at
That's not a
KW if they
conversation
want to
we
learn
should be
about
having
this.
with them.
no,
That's
but
my
I was
thought.
trying to figure out, like, is that something that, I know what you're saying, but at some point you're gonna be talking to that buyer's agent about different things. So if they are, because I know Miami gets a ton of
Yeah.
people from South America. I don't know if we have that as much, but maybe we're gonna start to, I don't know, because I've
You
heard a
might
lot
wanna-
of that area is moving up here.
Simply present a question, if the exchange rate fluctuates
Mhm.
higher, will that impact your buyer?
Right. I guess that's what I was looking for.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
Yeah.
question.
That's a great way to put it,
Yeah,
because you have to know that in advance, because you have to share that with your seller.
but I don't know that I would educate them on what they need to be writing. in.
No,
Yeah.
not that part.
Yeah, that's a great
I meant
point.
as far as having that
Yeah.
conversation, as in,
Yeah,
you know,
great
if something
question.
should happen between now and closing, is your client still able to close my client's
Yeah,
property?
creating that
Yeah.
dialogue.
Yeah,
with them.
I guess that's what I was looking
So
for.
that you can predict any future issues that are coming up. And that's the biggest thing. We had a conversation about this yesterday, that you really, really, really want to be able to be ahead of everything. You want to be proactive, not reactive, right?
agreed.
So and again, it's not just international buyers. There's so many things that you can put in additional terms. And if you are doing this for the first time, please reach out to someone who is seasoned or to your team leader, just to make sure that you are writing it in a correct way, not getting too legalese on it and, addressing all areas of concern.
Yeah, I'm not shy to ask questions.
I love it. love
Well,
questions.
because I'm
Bring
getting
it
ready to
on.
list one and it's gonna go live the beginning of March
Okay,
and it's over $4 million.
that doesn't suck.
So, no, it doesn't suck. I've already been hired. They've already signed their listing paperwork. All is good. I just realized it's not a new shirt, is it? What is Mini Pearl? Where's the hat? Just saying. I just noticed I left my
I
arm.
noticed it. I
Wait
was
a
gonna
minute.
grab you afterwards.
Thank you, Linda. Too late. I just saw it myself. Anyways, I'll take that off.
No one else saw it.
That's how she got the $4 million listing, by the way. She has a clothing tag on still.
No, it wasn't today that I went for listing, but anyways, nobody else told me they saw that today, just saying. So with that, obviously it's not gonna go until March and I've got, I brought in a professional designer, this and that, because they were on the market before and they did not sell.
All right.
And so that,
Consider all angles, you just really, I actually have a website that goes over different clauses that can be put in section 20 and the language that can be used. That's very simple. If I have a question on any special little thing, I always pull up that website just to get ideas on how to write it.
What website
I'm
is
not
that?
winging it.
yeah, I was just gonna ask. the
I
same
have it
thing.
saved in my bookmarks, but I can share that
Yeah,
later.
that'd
It's a
be
great
great.
website.
Yeah, that
Ah.
you need to share.
Everyone knows I'm a little nerdy and I like to research. That's what I do when I'm not
Well, we
sleeping.
love nerdy friends.
I was just gonna say, and if you weren't nerdy, we wouldn't love you as much.
Share the info.
And
Yeah.
it's taped right here, right?
What is it? We loved you before, and now we love you that much more.
Okay, next slide. Non-disclosure agreements. This goes for buyer side and seller side. So why do we want to use those? There's a lot of reasons. Let's just say you're working with a high profile client. Let's just say that there's someone that has enemies. Maybe a rapper, for example. And I don't want to be specific, but this is true. And
Kevin.
it's actually, it's true. It's actually a story that in the sports and entertainment division happened.
Sure does.
So I'm not, I'm not
Music artist.
targeting one group. I'm just telling you that this
I
is a
like that
true
music
story.
artist.
So and they call them NDAs, but that person had a lot of enemies and they cannot disclose where they live. So if someone puts that out, which this happened, that person could not move into the property now. And he couldn't back out of the contract. So it was now an investment property for them and they had to find another home. So,
Because they couldn't live in the home. All right, you lost me there somewhere.
so this rapper in particular had a lot of enemies.
Okay,
And because of that, if people knew where he lived,
He
it's
was
a
at risk.
danger to him
Yeah.
and his family.
okay, now I got it. Okay.
So
And same thing with high profile athletes being stalked, right?
exactly, you
Yeah.
have stalkers, you have all kinds of situations that can occur. The other thing is you don't want, if you have a buyer and they have a house that they're looking at, you don't want the seller to tell everybody that, okay, so-and-so looked at my house and here's their assets because I have their proof of funds. There has to be some type of protection. The other protection that you have to consider is pricing information. If it's a property where the address isn't disclosed on the MLS, you have to be very specific in protecting your clients through an NDA.
What does that look like? Can you go a little deeper into that?
Into what a non-disclosure agreement looks like, or
So you would put their regular name onto the agreement itself, but you don't share you would
so the
black
seller
out any type of.
may know who it is, but they can't talk about who it is. The non-disclosure agreement puts in there, these are the rules. If you break the rules, here's the consequences.
So when you're showing the buyer, you would go to the seller first, have them sign off on it. If they have
Before
audio or
showing.
equipment
Right.
or whatever, and the listing agent, and then you would show it.
Absolutely.
And let's back up with that for a second. If they're that high profile, you're not dealing with them
Not
directly.
Not
No.
normally,
It
correct.
would be in a
Correct.
trust, it would be in
True.
some
It would be
other
hidden.
type of
Yeah.
ownership.
Yeah.
And you usually have another party that you're dealing directly with. So
Their
if
assistants, yeah.
KYZ Entertainer is the
Yes.
seller. You're never gonna meet that person.
Nope.
No, you made a really good point because I closed on in Dunedin. This was several years ago. And I had no idea who they were. They were a referral to me. So I'm just calling her Kelly, and I never meet Kelly's husband, right? Because he's busy and he travels and he's a disc jockey. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I never put it together. It wasn't till later on the transaction, somebody said to me, do you know who you're working with? And I said, yeah, Kelly, she's a doll. And they go, no, her husband is Dead Mao, the most famous DJ that was just on last year's awards, this and that. He's huge. He's worth gazillions. I had no idea. And she was so unpretentious, normal. She was a friend's cousin. And
You know
even
what?
they didn't tell me.
I have to say that this goes across the board on a luxury or
I
non-luxury.
agree.
Yeah,
Your
true.
agency
Single agency
continues after the transaction closes.
forever.
So
Yes.
Forever.
you cannot take information from this individual and 2 years down the road and say, oh, and you know what he did, and you know what they had? You are breaking the law. So just know your agency never dies. Be careful with that. When Kathy was mentioning, someone said, do you know who you're working with? Even in a $100,000 condo, you should be telling that seller, or even buyer, but the seller particularly, your business is your business. I say this at every listing.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm working with friends. Your business is your business. If you want to tell the neighbors you're moving, your friends, because I will not repeat what goes outside of this room. That is so important. And once you get a reputation, because my friends know that someone in my neighborhood or in the circle of friends, they will never know from me that they're selling. And it's come back to me saying, you didn't tell me Judy was selling. Not my story to tell.
Yeah.
So it goes across the board with $100,000 condo to $100 million property you're selling.
Yeah, I have a group that I work out with a couple times a week, and one person in the group knows a family member of someone I'm currently working with, and they talk about like things that are happening or they saw them or whatever. I don't mention a word that I'm working with the other side of the family. I don't say anything. I just sit there and smile and listen to what they're talking about. Like I don't know anyone that they're talking about, but I know who they're talking about. So, and I don't know if they're baiting me to say something either. So you have to be very careful. But your point earlier, if you're working in a capacity where you are not working directly with the client and maybe a representative of them, the non-disclosure agreement can have it written in there to protect you as the agent being the middleman, that you will still get paid, right? So make sure that you are looking out for that. All right.
So, hey, this is Jennifer on Zoom. So the NDA traditionally would come from the client. The NDA that we're talking about here is between you and, for example, the listing agent, correct? And do we have an approved one for Ubaldini Group or?
To be specific to the transaction itself, so it should be drawn up by an attorney.
Okay. And traditionally, that's the client's attorney that's doing that.
Typically, yeah, but if it's a service you provide, it might be something that you provide.
Okay. Good conversation. Thank you.
Negotiations. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So I know that some people get really nervous in negotiations, but there's some fun things that you can do in negotiations. And I actually researched part of this past week. One of the things is if you have a customer or a client and it's your seller, and maybe they own some type of a store, like a sandwich shop or a coffee store, whatever it looks like. And during negotiations to sweeten the deal, you can say, I'll give you free sandwiches for 30 days after closing, or coffee for a year, once a month, we'll send you a variety box. Whatever that looks like, that has actually gotten the deal done for some agents. I know it's silly, but it may work. So it's just a little something to sweeten the deal. You just never know. So get creative is the whole point with that conversation on negotiations. Just get creative. Think outside the box. We're not always stuck here, right? There's so many other things we can do. You have to know the market. I don't care if it's luxury or not. You have to know the market, period. What's happening in the luxury market in order for the negotiation to occur properly is also very important. You have to understand it. So, if you are also going into a market that you're not 100% familiar with, try reaching out to an agent in the luxury division at that market center who is aware or understands that market. Get to know what's happening through developments in new construction, because there's a lot of that happening, especially in Pasco, in Pinellas, or I'm sorry, Hillsborough, Southern Hillsborough. There's a lot like Bradenton.
Sarasota County.
Yeah,
Manatee
Sarasota County, Manatee, there's a lot of construction happening there. And there are luxury developments going in. Don't feel like you cannot negotiate with the builder. I will say in this market, probably less likely, but 5 years ago, I was negotiating with builders and getting a lot for the buyer, a lot.
It's so different now. You guys know
Yeah.
that.
It'll go back.
Hopefully it will, but I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you're right. I used to go in and go, okay, here's what we want you to throw in for our client. And they
Exactly.
would.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, sometimes $5,000-8,000
Oh,
worth of stuff easily.
Yep.
Now it's like, no, we're giving you nothing.
Now we want you to overbid for the lot
Well-
itself, and then you're gonna pay for any extra.
And I think we have to keep in mind with negotiation, there's a respect issue here too. Because if you can imagine, here you are as a buyer agent, and there's new money, there's old money. They behave differently. We all know that. So you may have someone that seriously says, and it has happened to me, I want the boat. The boat.
Oh,
On the backyard.
I want
Yeah,
the
yeah,
yacht.
on the lift. Yeah, yeah.
But you've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that.
I've done that
And
too.
I've negotiated it into the deal.
You have to be careful because you could tick off that client where they're like, oh, they are so greedy. I am not going that. So know your client, have a conversation with that other agent. Now, I will present this as I am required to do. However, is this a deal killer that the boat stays? Because I've had it come real close that it was a deal killer because it insulted the client. the
But
seller.
maybe have that conversation. Earlier, we talked about golf cart communities. Does the golf cart stay? Well, if you see a big boat in the backyard, maybe ask that up front so you already know the answer and get the answer in writing from the seller.
Then it'd be fun if that happened probably more so in luxury than in non-luxury.
Well, non-luxury, I'm seeing smaller things.
Furniture.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
things like that.
furniture,
It does
although
happen, and
I
be
have,
careful.
although weirdly, a couple of years ago, I had a $550,000 house that had a Lamborghini in the driveway. Every single buyer that came through the house, you think he'll throw in the Lamborghini? I go, yep, if you throw in an extra 100,000,
That's right.
we're good. I
Yeah.
would make a joke out of it because clearly it wasn't part of the sale, but people had fun with it because he had this gorgeous Lamborghini in the third car garage bay, right?
Right.
So you have to have fun with it. You have to say, you know what, that's something the client has no interest in relinquishing, but we appreciate your offer.
Well, you know what?
Exactly.
You're gonna find specialty items like wine cellars. And these wine cellars are customized.
Oh, yes.
And the coolers and the racks,
Mhm.
they may want to remove those. And the buyer may just expect that in this wine cellar that you promote it, and be careful of that. If you're promoting it, they're expecting it.
And I have to be honest, if I walk in the house and I see it, just talking like a buyer, my expectation, other than your furnishings, that wine cellar is built into your house. I should expect it, not your 20 grand worth of
You
wine you
should
have in there,
expect it.
but I should expect the wine cellar goes with the
And you
house.
should ask. You should ask the
Exactly.
listing agent, I just want to confirm.
Yes.
Clarity, yeah.
Clarity is right, because
Ask
if
the
not,
question.
something that's built in, what do we all know in our business? Generally, if it's built in, the expectation is it stays. So if it doesn't convey, as a listing agent, you better have that all over your paperwork, because you know
Absolutely.
somebody's gonna completely complain about that.
Back to what you were saying real quick though, when you're talking about the reasons why on the NDA side, when you're talking about reasons why a buyer is moving to the location that they're moving to, or a seller is selling, you cannot disclose that unless you have permission in writing from your client to disclose that, because it can impact the negotiation position. So be very, very aware of that. Okay, so one thing I like to point out, we're not all millionaires, right? We are going to get there one day, but we are not all there yet. So put yourself in the shoes, though, of a client that has wealth, substantial wealth. Put yourself in the shoes of someone to ask them, what is a breaking point for you as dollar amounts? Because what seems like a lot of money to not a millionaire may not be a lot of money to a millionaire, right? So 500,000, is that going to break you, or is that still enough that you can be okay with negotiating on a property? You just have to make sure that you know that up front, because emotions start to get involved the closer they are to a number that they want to get to as a seller, or farther from the listing price that they wanted. And the same for a buyer, as they get closer to their highest price point that they can purchase a property with, they're getting a little more anxious and emotions start to run a little hot.
You're making me think of pre-qualifying and proof of funds. Certain cultures are quite insulted that we're asking to show their value.
Yeah.
So you have to have that conversation early on, that this is what is required. It's not a suggestion. It's a requirement that you're going to have to show us a bank letter or an account, of course, with the right information. But have that early, because I have had people not understand why I have to do this. And it can put you in a real uncomfortable position, especially foreign.
And I always put it on a seller request,
Yeah.
proof of
It's a
funds sent
requirement.
before
Yeah.
seeing.
And again, anytime you write seller request, make sure it's in writing from the seller, so that you can prove that that is actually what they requested. All right, next slide. Okay, recognize the emotional level, which we started to talk about, of the client. Emotions will start to run higher when they're getting further from their expected price point or the purchase price that they can get to. How about make sure that you have all the information you need to have an effective negotiation. So if they're talking about the neighboring property, you might want to know a lot about that property, because we know that people are comparing oranges to apples and not apples to apples, right? So make sure that you can have a rebuttal, not argumentative, but just pointing out, okay, I would like to highlight this property has blank, blank, and blank, while this property doesn't have blank and blank, but it does have this, right? Or this one sits on a waterfront lot and this one backs up to a wall with a street behind it. I mean, we have to know all of that and be ready for that. So have the information in your arsenal before you even start negotiating, because you're going to get caught off guard and you won't be able to represent your client in the best way possible.
And I'll jump in there. Session 6, our last one, next month on Wednesday, the 16th.
Not St. Patty's Day, the day before.
The girls were thinking ahead.
That's right. It was me. I will admit that. It's a national holiday.
Yes, it is.
So the next one, session 6, is going to cover that. It's going to cover land. It's going to cover boating. What were we saying? Like
Land,
seawalls,
boating, farms, like
farms, and-
luxury, big properties, luxury things that aren't our residential everyday
Right.
luxury.
So we'll cover more of that.
Yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty.
in the back.
Sometimes, or quite often, when we're working with clients in a luxury market, they are business owners. And they may have some sharp negotiation skills. Their negotiation process, while similar, may be completely different though from the real estate arena. So you have to set expectations with the client, again, before going into negotiations. Because you may have clients who are stubborn to concede in that negotiation process. So what amount is it worth you losing this deal over?
I have to jump in because I'm in the thick of it right now, working with an attorney. And the attorney is telling me how to negotiate. I have to obey, don't I? Because single agency tells me number 4, obey. And it's very difficult when that's not his line of work. It's an attorney telling me what to do, what to say, how to perform. And it makes it uncomfortable at times, but you have to listen to your client, listen to his representative.
Oh, the representative, okay,
Yeah.
that might be my
The
question.
attorney, especially when you get into a probate situation, and the attorney has the legal rights to make a decision and select that buyer and do what's right for his client, who in turn is your client.
His fiduciary duty.
He has fiduciary, I do as well. However, if he's telling me to perform a certain way within the legal boundaries, of course, but number 4, my favorite, obedience.
Right.
Right? You have to be careful because I'm in it right now and I don't agree with some of the things, but I'm obeying.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Next slide. Expectations. Luxury clients may have higher expectations, right? So we have to be aware of that. We have to make sure that they have trust in us and that we are professional at all times, which for some of us probably isn't as easy, right? Maybe we're just big personalities. They may not get that. So tone it back. You have to match and mirror your client that's in front of you. Be a good listener. And that just also means listening with your eyes, watching body language, inspecting the entire property. Like Linda had mentioned earlier, you have to be aware of everything that you're seeing and hearing, everything. Does the location fit the needs and lifestyle of your client? If they say this is what my lifestyle is and I have to be this far from work and you're showing them something that's outside of those boundaries, they may be a little more finicky with you and not happy with the service that they're getting because that's not what they told you. Unless you have that conversation up front and you say, look, I know we're not finding something here, or I found something that checks all of the boxes except A, B, then are you okay with me showing you that property? Don't just take them there because time, oftentimes in a luxury market, is very sacred to those clients. They want complete support all the time.
And with that support, understand this, they're normally surrounded by a team of professionals, and you're just one of them at this point. And you have to know your client, as Tony said, but now you're a team player. You may have to talk to that attorney. You may need to know who their accountant is because you may need some documentation. So find out who the team is. And when you talk like that, they understand that because that's their world. So just know that you're another team player and be a part of that. And I know that, I'm working with several people right now that they're throwing things at me that, wow, I've never been there, never did that. I'm writing it down. I'll take care of it. I'll take it because that's their expectation. They're going to throw things at you. Don't come back. Well, how do I? No.
Phone
I
a
will
friend.
handle it.
That's a phone a friend moment. If you don't know, don't ask them. Phone a friend. So, please communicate often. Often. Have a conversation with the attorney, but then send an email afterwards copying the client, as long as they don't tell you they don't want to be included in all of it because they're too busy. So again, setting those expectations. How often do you want me to communicate with you and by what means? But just communicate often. Let them know what's happening throughout the process. And know every feature of the property. We've already said this, but it's not just the property you have listed. If you're showing a luxury property, you need to know every feature about that property before you walk through the door.
Know who your key players are. We go back to communication and team. One thing that I think we have to remember is you may have this strong personality, say the husband, he's running a Fortune 500 company, but then you have a wife. Do not discount that wife and vice versa. Because that could really fall back on you, and ask that question. Do you both want to be included in the emails? I mean, these are such simple thoughts. However, you could lose a listing opportunity or a client if you don't respect the other party. And it may be that he or she does not want anything to do with it. They got their own thing going. And Mr. Smith, he's the one handling this. Know that from the get-go, the first appointment.
Yep, absolutely. And if someone says, I don't want to be included and they're a spouse, because of homestead rights and everything else in Florida, maybe they don't send you an email saying, I don't want to be included, but at least follow up with an email saying, per your request, I will only send the emails to these people who are involved in this listing. I will not send them to blank, blank, and blank. So just have it in writing to protect yourself so that it doesn't come back to bite you. All right, next slide. Okay. Again, you have to be an expert in the local market, and that's just not market statistics, right? What about crime maps? How do I find sinkhole or subsidence? Right? There are some things that we can do as agents, and there are some things that we should not be doing. And I'll say it all the time. If you cannot be the direct source, be the source to provide the source and give them the opportunity to look it up themselves or have someone else on their team look it up. If we're giving wrong information and they're dependent on that, then that's not going to be pretty in the long run, right? How about if you're selling in a downtown location like downtown Tampa and there's no specific parking? Well, where's the next parking building where I can get parking? You have to know every bit of information, okay? So be an expert in that local market that you're working in. Have your resources and connections, CPAs, financial advisors, attorneys. I mean, the list can go on and on. Car drivers, if you have a high profile client, get to know restaurant owners. How can we get this person in and out of the restaurant without being seen and harassed by people? Start setting those relationships up and do it now so that when that time comes, you're ready for it. Like any client, all clients, including luxury, expect a hassle-free experience, right? They want it to be easy. Electronic signatures have really helped that, but just make it as easy as possible for them, okay?
And you know what, you gotta be careful with that electronic signature thing because it's convenience. That's the easy button too, right?
Yeah.
Ask them, are they okay with that? Of course. However, what we do a lot is, would you like me to come to you to get this signed?
Yes.
And I will tell you the majority of the time, it's yes. So if I'm just, here's the contract, get it signed and send it back to me, they may think, because they're used to being handheld, really?
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm signing here. So you gotta be careful with that. I'm working with someone right now that sent me a text yesterday. The language is a little bit of a barrier right now, so they're telling me, they said to me, what's the address of that title company? Well, they're a seller and the buyer asked to use their own title company to pay for title. So the language barrier was difficult. And I had to be careful not to insult them. Why do you need this? So I texted them, is there something I can do for you with the title company? That was my way of saying, what are you doing?
Yes.
So come to find out, the title company is sending them electronic signature requests. They don't even know what they're signing or reading. So I said, I will handle that. Today, we got in touch with the title company. Don't go directly to them, include us, please. And I said to them last night, we will bring these documents to you, explain them to you, have you sign them, we will take care of that. That is luxury. That is a concierge service. It's not just sending something to them and expecting them to understand it. You want to get paid the big money, you gotta work it.
Gotta earn it.
Yeah.
You really have to earn it.
The other thing too, as we talked about yesterday, don't be that agent. I don't care if it's luxury or not. Don't be that agent that just sends a contract and asks them to sign it. Or any document. please review it. I'm not saying interpret those documents, just review the terms of it for them. You should not just be blindly sending things to people and asking them to sign it,
Agreed.
right? Have strong luxury connections. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll dive in for a hot second. All you need to do, if you have luxury connections, you can tell your listing client, okay, I'm gonna market this to my database of luxury folks, or whatever that might look like in your world. Or I have a lot of luxury buyers who are looking for a property like this, or I have friends that might know a friend that is looking for this. Whatever it is, start your connections.
I'm gonna jump in there. How about our luxury agents?
Mhm.
Yep.
We're not supposed to do any type of pre-marketing, but you know that 24-hour rule, get on the phone. Hey, so-and-so, just want to let you know that you probably have a buyer that would fit this need. I'm calling you first. Hey, but I'm calling you first. Yes, but reach out, pick up the telephone. Again, reach out to the agents.
And just with every transaction, just bring experience and value, right? Just any experience that can be added value. What is your value proposition? Why should they select you? And it's not because of just your marketing. What's the value for using you? And it's not a dollar value, it's what you can bring to the experience. All right, next slide. Luxury lingo. This is the fun part. I love this. At the end of this, we'll have it up, but you can, it's a brokerage in Austin, Texas that actually had this. The Institute for Luxury Home Marketing also has a dictionary for luxury lingo, but this one was really in-depth and detailed, and I loved a lot of the things they had to say. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of the words, but al fresco dining, that's something that we see here in Florida a lot, right? It's outside dining. Doesn't that sound nicer in a listing than just saying covered patio for your outdoor furniture?
Lanai.
Your
Well,
lanai,
nice what we're used to. Yeah.
right? So appliance garages, they don't really do those so much anymore, but we still may see those in a luxury home or even everyday home.
Or butler's pantries.
Right.
A lot of butler pantries.
Butler pantries, there's a lot of houses that have those. And it used to, actually, there's a story, this tells it. The butler's pantry, is it on here at the bottom? Oh, go to the next slide. Butler's pantry. It tells you that historically, it was a room off the kitchen and the butler had to sleep in there to protect the silver.
Mine did.
Right?
Are
Interesting.
we allowed to use
Yeah,
that very
Kevin's
quick?
saying, I'm thinking that sounds a little
Who knew?
prejudiced, just putting it out there.
Who knew how that got
Next to
started,
the
right?
master
I think
bedroom.
it's how we say it.
But today, the butler's pantry can be that little walkthrough area between a dining room that's formal and the kitchen, or it can be a whole separate section of a kitchen, right? So there are different kinds of butler's pantries, but they exist quite often now, and I'm seeing them in new construction even more so. Next slide. Coffee bars. We're seeing a lot of that. Circular driveways, we're seeing a lot of that. Luxury closets. I wanted to highlight this. Listen, if it's a walk-in closet, it doesn't mean it's photo worthy. In any listing,
Yes.
it's true.
I know.
How many have we gone through and you're like, whoa, what is going on in that closet? It happens a lot. Make it photo worthy. It better have some amazing things. Like there are 2-story closets with a whole designated shoe section. Or, I mean, I had a listing one time where an entire room was made into a closet. Photo worthy. You don't want to walk into my closet right now and take a photo of that. I'm promising you, it's a no-go. Don't do it.
Last night's out with it.
Right, it's on the floor in a corner, and my dog is laying on it now. So, yeah, but coffee bars, I wanted to go into that for a hot second. Coffee bars are huge right now. We have a lot of latte drinkers and specialty coffees, and we have all of our mugs displayed. Actually, Jody Avery had a really cute thing on her Facebook page where she was displaying her favorite things. She does that once a week and it's just super adorable. She has her own coffee section in her house. So your coffee bars, right? We're addressing the crazy here. Okay. Coffered ceilings. You guys have to start learning this. A groin ceiling, a coffered ceiling, a tray ceiling, a double tray ceiling. You should know this for everyday listings. A cove ceiling, a drop ceiling. What are the differences here? You have to know this. It's in every home, right? What's a vaulted ceiling versus a cathedral ceiling versus a shed ceiling? You have to know those differences. You want to sound like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't. But if a little research and education gets you that much further, better for you. Crown molding, double pane windows, egg and dart molding. Do you guys know what dental molding is and why it's called dental molding, right? Typically, it's the one that has the little squares and they call it dental molding because it looks like teeth. Right. Maybe George Washington teeth, I don't know, but it looks like teeth. Double ovens, downlighting, dual climate control, just all these things. These are little details that you need to probably go over with a luxury client and quite honestly, any client. Right? Next slide. Foyer. Is it foyer or foyer? I don't care, but just know what it is, right? However you want to say it, tomato, tomato, it could be a foyer or a foyer. But it's that front entry area, right? When you walk into a home and it's a designated space.
You have mudroom up there?
Mudroom, quite possibly, it's in alphabetical order. Heliopads and hangars, H-A-N-G-A-R. There is a property not far from our house that's on the north end of Lake Tarpon. And they take their helicopter to work every day and I can hear it going over my house. So it exists in our market. It is not common, but it exists, right? So you want to be able to have those intelligent conversations and know what these things are called. In-law plans, herringbone, like different way that flooring and tile is laid. You might want to know that. The different types of stone and tile. We had a field trip. You and I had COVID during the field trip, but we had a field trip at the granite place down the street at Tarpon Marble and Granite. And apparently it was a great presentation and people learned a lot from it. So get to know those things, get to know your granite vendors. If there's a property that has beautiful cabinets, but outdated granite, I have a person that can easily solve this problem for you. Right? Okay. Keep going. Infrared sauna, meditation gardens, right? Florida friendly landscaping. You can say that, but it's really xeriscaping, right? So know the term for it. Moats, believe it or not, they're making a comeback and you don't have to have a castle, believe it or not.
It's called retention pond.
Yeah, there's that, but it's just another way to add security around the house besides just a hedgerow, perhaps, right? Different styles of home, Mediterranean style, right? Key West style. You have to know the style of a home, get to know the architectural details of a home, okay? Different columns out front. You want to know what type of columns they are. Okay. Next slide, parquet floors, pedestal sinks, pedestal tubs, right? Those are the tubs that don't have claw feet. They sit on a ring normally, that's a pedestal, okay? You have to know those differences. Outdoor kitchens, we know, playscape, it's an area that's designed for playgrounds. How nice does that sound? Rather than saying, yep, there's a playground in the backyard, there's a playscape area in the yard, right? Great. Who knows the difference between portico share and portico? Right? The portico is a big covered area off the house that has columns that you don't drive through. The portico share you drive through. Those are the differences. You should know this. But oftentimes the portico share is referred to as a portico, and that is not correct. So know your terms, right? We don't have so much of a problem here with radiant heat flooring, but just know it because we do have customers from up north and you still want to have that intelligent conversation. Should it be brought up, right? If they tell you their old house had that and you're asking, what is it? You should know. Recessed medicine cabinets, those are hopefully not making a comeback. Safe rooms. We're seeing that, right? We're seeing those in homes, safe rooms. So you might even have a listing. Ask them, any safe rooms that needs to be disclosed closer to end of contract, just disclose it.
Actually, I have one that does have a safe room, and I wasn't sure if that's something you should market as part of the house, because maybe that'll
Ask
have
the
buyers
seller.
think, okay,
Ask the
like if
seller,
it's a
yeah.
dangerous area or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, or maybe they just have jewelry and,
Yeah.
very expensive collectibles that they want to put in a safe room, and it's a place that they can also go to should their
A
house
storm,
get
a
broken
hurricane.
into,
Yeah.
or a storm, or whatever it looks like. Yes. I know this is weird, but septic systems, we need to know about septic systems, and most luxury properties these days are not on septic, right? But you still have to know. There are rural estates up north that may be on a septic system. So just learn about them. All right, next slide. Solarium, we do have those here, even in non-luxury homes. So understand what a solarium is and ways that they can take care of it, or ideas for solariums, or fountains, or shrubs or plants, or whatever it looks like, but just know what it is. Different types of shower heads, know what those are, right? Because if you all have seen shower heads, some of those, I'm like, it's a human car wash, right?
Yeah.
The types of appliances and the brands, right? Convection ovens. If you don't have gas, what type of a range is it? Is it induction? Is it electric? So you have to know that information, and it would be ideal to understand how an induction oven works, right? It's copper. The copper is what gets hot. The rest of the area does not get hot. That's why they're very popular with people.
You're seeing air fryers in
Mhm.
ovens and microwaves now.
Yeah.
That's becoming standard.
So be up with the current trends. Sub-zero, all of that you need to know. Topiaries, the type of landscaping, you want to know information about that. Italian cypress, those are things that we see a lot in luxury estates. Surround sound systems, those are in non-luxury homes as well. We gotta know a little bit about them. Verandas, Venetian plaster. I mean, the list goes on and on, guys, but you should know this. Here's the website where I got the information. It's www.searchaustinhomes.com/luxury. www.searchaustinhomes.com/luxury. Get to know this list,
Great list.
right? If anyone would be interested, because I already have a lot of these items that I used to teach a class back in the day that talked about different types of ceilings and examples of what those are. If you would like a class that went over these type of things in detail, I'm happy to put that together. I mean, it's fun. I like doing that. So if you're interested, email Kevin and let him know. Thank you, Kevin. All right, so on the next slide, if you guys could do us a huge favor, we like to know how you're doing, and we love your feedback. So if you could go to kwugeval.com, let us know how the class was. Let us know if you have any suggestions. And as Gary Keller says in the one thing, more than anything else, expertise tracks with hours invested, right? So invest some time, guys, to get to know these things. Okay, it's here for you.
And if anyone's going to family reunion, know that there are a ton of luxury events, luxury classes, and you can dial into that if you are online, and we'll hopefully bring a lot of that back to you.
Because on the following Thursday, there will be a family reunion recap with family reunion agent partner meeting lunch.
Any questions that we can answer for you? Just unmute yourselves. You don't have to put it in chat. Everyone's good?
All right.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. Have a great day. And hopefully if you aren't going to family reunion, please jump in and watch it online again or come to the recap. All right.
And for those that aren't and are still online, we're having it streamed here live Sunday and Monday. So
Come on in.
ask the office for the details.
All right, guys.